start our first breakout session.
What? Oh. That's right.
Okay, so we have Matt Pettis. He's a senior data scientist with Train Incorporated, where he applies data science to IoT problems of predictive failure, predictive maintenance, and energy optimization policies. He's done data science in the fields of general IT, retail, and industrial IoT. He's a frequent speaker at the local R users group, Twin Cities R users group. He cares about reproducible research and finding the simplest solutions to problems data science or not. Please welcome Matt Pettis.
Right. It's on. Excellent. Well, hello. I'm Matt Pettis. You've heard my introduction. I don't like to talk too much about myself at this point, so we're going to jump into this. So the topic of this talk is the downs: Markdown, blog down, and book down. So we're going to jump into an example, and we're going to work through a couple of things. It's not code interactive. I didn't think I had time to do that. We're going to show code. We're going to talk about, or I'm going to talk about, you're going to listen. We're going to talk about the pieces of this and some of the philosophies, how to do this, a couple of tricks of what's going on, but mostly it's an introduction and a place to get your toehold in and how to do Markdown, book down, blog down, and where and why you might want to use it. So let's start with an example. So sharing your brilliance with the world because you are awesome people. All right. You're data scientists, you are someone, you're statisticians, you see things that others don't see. Not only that, others need to see the brilliance that you are finding in the research that you are doing. So how do we do that? And what's the topic we're going to look at? And my favorite example, because it's everyone's favorite example, is you discover things about the iris data set. Oh yes, oh, you never get away from that. So everyone here probably is familiar with the iris data set. It's a classical set of measurements of iris sepals and petals from Ronald Fisher, 150 observations. It's used in all the introductory data science courses, but you, because you're brilliant, have found insights that you need to share with people. So you start looking at that and you find out, you know what? I have found some things out about the iris data set. So you go through and you code up, because this is data that's in a CSV format usually. You want to be able to look at the observations and possibly print them and show some of your brilliant insights. And then also link to things like, what do the irises look like? So let's actually run this code. I'm going to do my little shortcut, Control-Alt-B. If I put it at the bottom, it'll run everything above it. And I like it. And you get some output. Okay, you get output this time, you did last time. Yes, okay. So what you did is you opened up the iris data set. You printed the iris data set in your console because we are in our studio. When you did this, you executed code, what was in the browser here, what was in your editor here, and it just printed out a whole bunch of observations about the sepal length, width, petal length, width, and the species that it refers to, or that is relevant to. 150 observations. You said, well, it's hard to see things in numbers, so you may want to do things like summaries. So you run a summary on this and say, what's the average sepal length, width, petal length, width on these 3 types of flowers, and you display them in your console. You were brilliant though, remember? You don't want this sort of like, you don't want to hide your light under a bushel. So right now, these things are only coming up in your console, and that's all you can see. And then you say, wow, I found out that these things have some average differences. You've probably seen this before to say, well, let's look at this. The petal width on a setosa is about an average of 0.2, but on a virginica, it's 2.03. Wow. People need to know this. So you see these, and then you, not only do you see these things, but you want to make comments about these things and record your thoughts, because if you're like me, you forget your comments. You forget your thoughts about what's going on. So you write these things down in code. Now, code has comments, has the ability to make comments in there. It's been there forever, and this is not news to you. But it's easy if as you're interacting with your data, that you actually write your thoughts down with the code. Not only do you document what the code is doing, or document like what your functions are doing, but what your thoughts are about what's going on. As you see, this is just straight .r R script code that you're doing. But before I had this, before when I was doing R and doing other programming languages that needed this is where I had to record my stuff, my thoughts, or I had to keep a separate notebook or find some way to tie this together. So I'm showing you the suboptimal way that I had to do this a long time ago. Secondly, you make a plot of this to say, well, what would these ratios look like for all of these things? So we use ggplot, obviously, because it's the nice way to do this. In RStudio, it nicely puts a little picture on the side in your plots. You can look at it. And I color these things. What's the petal? What did I color in this one? Petal length and width. And I colored it by the species. And you can see down here, here's one species well separated. Here's another species well separated. I have a plot. However, the plot, I expanded it here, but the plot's on the side. You can start to see what the problems are on here. Thirdly, you don't just want to do data analysis, encapsulated. You often want to put stuff like, what's external information that you want to pull in? Like, oh, let's look at a picture of Setosa. Let's do that. Do that. What do these things look like? Beautiful. On a nice picture. So, as we see, when I did my analysis, I ran the code. I'm a good R programmer. I know how to take summaries. I know how to plot things. I know how to write about them and communicate these things with people. But this just doesn't cut it for me in terms of putting in code. I have to put these things in nice comments. I have to do some offsets with these things with like little exclamation points to like chunk out what I'm doing. If I want to have a picture of Setosa, I have to copy in the link to it, and it's kind of a mess. Back when I did this before we had RStudio, if I made a plot like this, I'd have to do is save that plot down to a file, and then I have to open that up in some other either browser or something else. It's kind of a mess. So the problem is that your genius insights are eclipsed by awkward tooling. At least they have been. The results and the comments are not together. When I do my code, the comments are in there, but when they go through the console, they're not there, and they're also not nice to present and share with other people. Images show up in another pane, or you have to save them to a separate file. You have to click around for other pictures, like external information you want to bring to bear on your progress, or I'm sorry, on your analysis that isn't necessarily in the data itself. So it's hard. This is what I think, though, I feel like it's selling to. My favorite one, informational fails, videos, is that, yeah, I'm showing you how to do this stuff in R code, but it looks like I'm doing this. Like, obviously there's an easier way, but I don't have to go through these gymnastics to show you how badly it does. So that said, let's compare the Markdown code. So what I did was, that code that I did here, all I did was I translated it over and I put it in Markdown. So this is all background. And this is what it looks like in Markdown. I pretty much, in this example here, and this is going to be available to you, I pretty much copied all the relevant chunks over here to this and made it into a Markdown document. I kept the same or similar comments, and I did the same analysis of printing out the data. You can see that this gives you a nice, well, it doesn't look like this yet. It doesn't look nice at all. So what is the advantage of doing it this way? I said, you all know what the answer is. But we're going to show you, to show you that we can translate this over pretty readily. And we're going to talk about what the chunks are, how this actually works. So if I do this, I copy this over and I have 3 basic chunks. And we're going to talk about these chunks, what they are, before we move on to the other pieces. In an R Markdown document that is different than an R script, there are 3 pieces. That are the way I think about it, there are 3 functional pieces. One, there's the header that helps you dictate, which helps control what your output's going to look like. And we're going to see what that is in a second. The second part is your comments. These are the codes that help. This is the commentary that you put into the document to help you record what you're thinking about. And the third part is the code itself. Actually, this is the code itself here. And this is the code itself here. All right. So that said, let's look at the chunks a little closely. What do? The header part here helps you control globally, control output globally. What are you going to do? As we showed before, when we ran code, we got stuff that just puked out into the console. This helps you control what the output's going to look like. I can do HTML out of here. I can do docs out of here. I can do PDFs. But I can control all that from the header here. This is a YAML. This goes to the beginning of the file. It's YAML. I'm not going to talk about what that is. You can go ahead and look that part up. But this is how you control what your output looks like. I can put the author, who I am, in there, the date, an output. And there's other functions there's other configurations that go in here as well. So this helps you control generally the pieces of how the overall document's going to look like. So here, I render this. Actually, we're going to come back to this here. When I do this, I can render this with this knit button right here. You can see here, I can knit. And when I do that, it goes through. It reads the header, and it outputs this into, and the way I have it configured, it outputs into an HTML document. And this is a little internal browser, but it's showing you what the output looks like. Then the nice thing about this is, like I say, the thing I really like is that it breaks apart the commentary and the code. So here in the gray sections, I have the code, but all the commentary here is turned into marked up information, like my thesis. Over here in my thesis, you can see over here, I guess, if I do this. My thesis has a single pound sign at the beginning, which indicates for HTML documents that this is an H1 header. I can do down here, what does a data set look like? It's a smaller one, that's an H2 header, and so on. But I can separate out the comments from the actual execution of the code. So this is what this looks like. So this is nice. But the real power in this that I like is that through the header I can control, through this YAML header I can control other pieces. Sometimes I make really long documents. What if I want a table of contents? Well, I don't have to jump through a lot of hoops. I just have to change the header a bit and add something that says here, TOC meaning table of contents, add a table of contents. And then boom, at the beginning, I get these hyperlinks here that allow me to actually click on them and go to the sections that I want. So I get to separate out the actual coding and the actual commentary from some of the presentations pieces from this in a very nice way. And separation of concerns is a nice software engineering term that people use, or that software engineers use for when they want to make programs to say, well, I want modular things to be working, so I want this piece to do this and not care about how other pieces of the program are working. The header here tells you about how to present the data versus what the actual content is that you are doing. I can actually change other things in there as well. There's thematic styles I can do. I can do this one where the theme is journal. I think it's called journal. And it's a little hard to see in here, but the font's slightly different. I didn't do a huge difference in here. And then I do highlighting as Tango. And you can see here down here in the code sections, print, there's coloration in here that you can control, which was not present in the other one. And I used a very simple basic one that doesn't have a lot of flair. But you can control all those things without having to do it on a per chunk basis. You can control that all through the header. And the nice thing about this, like these are the basic ones, but if you really want to get fancy, you can do something like this. This is one I use quite a bit. This is, you have to download a package called RMD formats. Read it down. This is Kate. What I have here is, this is the exact same markdown code that I use to generate the rest of the report, but I just now used a different template called Kate to generate this. And you can see in here, I get the same HTML content in here, but now instead of having a table of contents at the top, I have this nice nav bar on the side. I have myself down here, the date and time down here. And this is a table of contents. I can click on here to navigate. And I get to control this way. So this is really nice to me because I like this, because I'm not a fancy person. I don't dress well. I can barely even clean myself. And I don't like to think about how things are rendered so much, but I get to pick these things up and use them for free and just focus on my analysis for a bit. And even if that's not the case totally, if I want to tailor it, I can work on that separately from my analysis. I can separate the actual data science coding from the actual tweaking out of what my output is. Okay, other key pieces that Markdown allows you to do is that it allows you to number sections. You can number those sections as opposed to just click on them and go down the line. You can do code folding. I like this, where Do you want to show your code in the markdown or not? You can say by default, show the code, or you can have it being hidden. And they say, and then you can do, or when you're ready to actually look at the code, you can click on the code button, and you can actually see the code. You can add your own custom CSS. If you are a person who likes doing design work, you can use custom CSS and actually add that there and make your own themes to be used. So you can actually, if you work for a company, you want to mix in the brands to your company, you can do that work. You can do that separately from the actual data science work or have someone else work on that separate. All right, commentary. This is straight markdown. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but this is how you actually get at how to put in the marked up information here. It's saying, how do I do headers? How do I do subheaders? How do I do bulleted lists? How do I add images? How do I add links and tables? So when I started, I am old. You can see there's gray in my beard. When I had to do work on this, when I did HTML, I actually did raw HTML. That's a long time ago. People haven't touched raw HTML for a long time. They've used frameworks and other things to do. So when I had to make a document like this, I would have to code in the H1 tags, H2 tags, and so on. And then, now it escapes me, but who's the guy, Darren Fireball, who came up with the idea of Markdown, which is the brilliant addition, which is where our Markdown comes from. If you don't know the history, it's actually kind of cool, is that he said, you know what? HTML has this whole just broad set of things we can do with it. Say I can make H1 tag, header tags, I can make bulleted lists, but they're all really ugly, just like XML itself is. I have to contain tags around things and do it, and it's not really fun to engineer. But I only use a subset of this for most of the work that I do. I only make bulleted lists. I only make headers. I only make tables. I kind of want to include links and images. Why don't I make a sub-little language that actually is called Markdown, where I can actually put my code in there, put the things I want my HTML to turn into, and then make a processor that I feed that through and turn that into the HTML that I want. So that's actually where Markdown comes from. And it took off. People use it all the time. And this is what you do when you have Markdown. This is where it comes from, is someone saying, I want a subset of HTML that I only want to just use that small subset, and I don't want to go through the pain of actually doing the ugly, ugly coding. So this is the child of that, and it's how we use it today, and for great profit. You probably know how to do this. Like I said, I won't go too far into this. You can do headers, bulleted lists, links, images, tables, and so on. But the commentary is important because when I did my analysis, I had my code, but I want to record what it is. This is where you record your ideas. And then images. As I said before, when I made images before, when I made a report out of this, I had to write my code, puke out images to a file, open them up, copy and paste them, and I had to use a Word document to make my reports. You can do this all in one spot if you know how to structure your report to say, I want a plot here, do your plotting code there, and then I'll put the plot in line for you. And life is easy. You don't have to go through a separate path to actually make it PowerPoint if you convince the people you have to present to that they don't want PowerPoints. Tables are nice. This is how we make tables. You can add it with cable and knitter with cable to make nice format tables. And there's a table extra if you really want to get fancy with them. You can make nicer tables with this. Okay, use cases. Where do I use this? Dr. Siebert's talked about if you attended that talk, he made a Shiny meta package that would run a scheduled report for what he wanted to at any time. And this is what I use it for, except I don't have Shiny. I had known that, I would start going to Shiny. But if you want to do more low-end stuff, I schedule R&D reports to do cron jobs or to run at midnight, just like he talked about, to do things like data integrity checks. If by monitoring some process to show, hey, did this database actually get this data updated? Did you do what you do? I would run these cron jobs. And I use Markdown because I can run that from the command line, puke out this report, and then I have these to show to people saying, when you ran this last night at midnight, you weren't ready, or your database was lagging by this much. So I use it for automated cron job reports. I do it to avoid doing manual PowerPoint presentations. I hate PowerPoint presentations. I use them. Actually, I use PowerPoint. And the last time I used PowerPoint was purely to be able to use the image editing so I could put pictures over pictures, the ones I saw before. but I hate making it. My old boss actually, she's a master in mechanical engineering, and when she moved up, she said, I hate my job because all I do are PowerPoint presentations for people and they ignore them. And then she started using this. She convinced them to say, you know what, I need to do this daily or this weekly status report. I'm just going to make this report. You're going to like it. You're going to use it. And then I don't have to spend my time copying and pasting images in there. So Markdown is beautiful for that. Taking notes while talking to yourself. That's what the Markdown's for. As I make my code chunks, I talk to myself. What am I expecting to see? What did I see? And I have my code chunk actually reflects that. So I use this to keep my notes for myself and then to expose that to other people, whoever I'm reporting to. And then reproducible research. When you run this, if I do this, if I make models, if I do any sort of data analysis, the thing that pains me the most, like before I started going down this path of knowing what reproducible research was, is where I would run an analysis, I get a result, I'd be excited, I go run to someone and tell them, look what I found, and say, oh, show me how you did that, and go back and I could never redo it. And it would just pain me. So now I take great pains to actually work through our Markdown and through very controlled Git track processes or Git track projects to make sure that when I have a result, I can reproduce it at any point in time. If I've moved on and to show what it looked like before, I can roll those things back. So Markdown is great for not reproducible research, not just for the code, but for the reproducing your thoughts at a point in time. It's actually kind of nice if I version my R Markdown file as I go through time, I can actually see my thought process evolve as well if I really care to. And that's really helpful for my own purposes. I get better by doing this. So we're going to straight off into two parts here. Opinion. How do you use Markdown reports? Just like I described before, what I do is, normally I make a report, either for myself or for someone else. I do a high-level summary of my report. I do all my loading and configuration at the top of it, and I do analysis sections. For a particular project I'm doing predictive maintenance. I say, well, what does this particular unit look like? I'll say, I think this unit is not predictable. And then I load all my data in and I go through, say, well, how much data do I have? Am I missing any data? Were there any indications things should be failing? And so on. But I make these sections where I think about a unit of thought. I write down what I expect. I analyze. I actually write the code to show what I think should come out. And then it comes out. And then in the same time, or after that's done, I'll write into the RMD what I actually did find and how it compares to what I thought beforehand. So it's a nice iterative cycle, how you keep track of your thoughts as well. And RMD or Markdown files are a fantastic vehicle for that. So as I say, I start the report there. I do as much global setup work at the beginning, and I make analysis sections. And I auto-generate the table of contents that you saw before. My analysis sections are just what I said. What did I expect? What did I observe? As well as the analysis artifacts that support my observations or my conclusions as well. So I like that. It's a nice way, like part of Markdown is that it's kind of free form. You can do so much that it's free to do what you want. But it's nice to have some discipline there too, so I know how to read these things and go back and find the chunks that I want. So I highly encourage anyone who's doing Markdown to do those things, to find a discipline, find a routine that you can settle into so that when you read a report, you know what you expect in the different sections, so you can scan and find things quite easily. I guess I don't need to talk about these things because I forget that I do. And then another sidebar. R Markdown versus notebooks, like in Jupyter. I gave this talk to the R user group a couple weeks ago, and one of the things that came up was the question, what's the difference between R Markdown and Jupyter notebooks? And why would you prefer one over the other? So the first thing I want to say is I'm not here to start fights. I'm not the Vim versus Emacs, Linux versus Windows, whatever. This is not about that. The thing that I really like about Markdown versus notebooks, and I said I think in Jupyter, but this actually applies, and you can use the notebook functionality in R as well, is that I have it's pretty easy for me to discipline myself to do sequential linear execution for what I'm doing. I don't accidentally define variables at one point that I try to call later on that I haven't defined because I define them later in the code. And Jupyter cells and notebooks are a little, if you know anything about Jupyter, you can get yourself into a lot of trouble. This slide actually, with the picture I'm showing here, I don't like notebooks, is a talk. Has anybody heard of Joel Bruce? Joe Bruce is a Python, more of a Python developer. Now he does Allen Labs, I believe. He does AI, and he's written a book on the data science from scratch, I believe. But he gave a talk within the last year about, even though he's a big Python guy, how he doesn't like notebooks and what the issues are. And I have a link at the end of this with the resources about his talk and the issues with notebooks and why it's not the best. Like I said, I like reproducible research. Notebooks are not really great for reproducible research because you can do things that are out of order. The biggest thing I like about our Markdown, but do not like about notebooks, is that, as you saw in our Markdown example, we just have Markdown and code. And as I change, if I iterate through that through versions, and I check in my work through that, I can see evolution quite easily because it's just text. It's just the actual things I want to comment on and the actual code. Jupyter notebooks don't have that. They have a whole bunch of like HTML Markdown and magic JSON stuff going in there, and so you can't really version these really well. I mean, you can always check them in, change it, check in another thing, but they also record the state of where you were when you're executing the notebook, and it's really not helpful if you're doing it that way. So I don't like notebooks because they don't play well with Git and versioning and keeping track of my thought process as I evolve. And I don't like magic. There's things in Jupyter called magic in order to do things like output graphs and connect to external sources, and it just gets really weird now. So I don't like it for that reason. And why I encourage Markdown for a lot of if you want to just kind of focus on the reproducibility part of if the thing that you really care about is reproducibility, I would really stick with a Markdown or a Markdown type language or a Markdown type format rather than a notebook, like a Jupyter one that has a lot of gunk in there that you can't. All right, so we talked about Markdown quite a bit. Logdown. We're talking about this. So you did your iris analysis, right? You want to share this. Now you can make a report and you can show people around, but now you want to expose this to the world. So you have a lot of insights, but blast emailing this stuff to people gets annoying. I always like this because this is what I do when I talk to people about my love of either scuba or bluegrass. People do this. Feel the same way about talking about the iris data set. Can I tell you about the iris data set? No. So you want a way to do this that doesn't require like blasting people. So many easy websites like Foursquare, yes, Square. You can make websites everywhere, and they're easy. You can't swing a dead cat without trying to make a website. But a lot of the easy solutions don't support things that I care about when doing statistical analysis. They don't do math equations well. They don't embed images well or tables and lots of other things that I care about. So Logdown is a solution to that. I have here install and how to generate new site instructions. It's better that you read through those than go through here. It really doesn't, it's not helpful in class to do that. But I'm going to show you how this actually works. I'm running short on time here. I didn't spend too much time. So what we're going to do is we're going to, I'm going to show you Blogdown. Blogdown, the nice thing about this is like Blogdown, Bookdown, Markdown, Blogdown, and Bookdown all use and re-leverage your Markdown files or your Markdown, the skills you learn in making Markdown. So here, what you can do is you can install once you install the Blogdown software, you can use these add-ins to do things such as, once you do that, installs it updates this add-ins drop-down, and there's this Blogdown section where I can, actually, the making of a new site is through a new project. That's detailed in those links, but once I have a new Blogdown project for a blog, you can do things like, you can make a new post or serve up your site. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I have some images here. What I did was I copied here my iris analysis and said, I'm gonna make a blog post out of this. Not only that, I'm gonna make a whole friggin' site that allows me to serve this one particular site or this one particular analysis. So everything below this dashed line here is the same Markdown that we've been talking about. Above it is a slightly different YAML setup that's particular to Blogdown, and the instructions will cover it. But once I have that, I can just serve it. And under here, under Blogdown, once I've installed Blogdown and under add-ins, I can serve site. And the nice thing is, it serves it locally so you can view your entire blog that you create. And this is what it looks like. There's some posts in there that I had before, but just from that piece of that RMD file, with a slightly changed header and using the Blogdown package, I can make an entire website or a blog post for myself. And all I have to do is all my blog entries can be written in Markdown files, which is fantastic. So we have this Lorem Ipsum, hello Markdown. Here's my big Iris news. I'm serving it locally. And here it is. I did no customization beyond this. I just want to show you what it looks like if you don't do anything at all to it. And this is what I get. The same analysis. I get tables and I get plots. And I can embed images here. So now I can do this. Well, why is this good? Why is this nice? Well, the nice thing about this, Blogdown, the one piece that Blogdown also gives you is that it's static, which means that when you get done, what you get is, once you are running, you get this public folder right here. You can see where I'm highlighting here, I guess maybe not so well, but once I make all my posts, it generates a public file, and that public file I can drag en masse up somewhere else and make myself an entire website. So there's a place called Netlify. There's a couple options. You can use GitHub. There's a couple places you can host it, but the one a place called Netlify, which allows you just to drag a static website of HTML files, images, CSS files, and so on. And all you have to do is drag that folder. Once you create an account here, which is free, drag it in there, and I can create a whole website online. So here, generated a really random name for me, but this is actually online, out there. If you went to Sad Goldberg, whatever, you can go see my big Iris news or any posts that I do. Once I do and I can update them, push here. And like I said, I've just made a whole blog based on just knowing Markdown and installing a Blogdown package. So I like this for just being able to push this out, and I'm not sending people my newsletter about how crazy stuff is, and they're not just marking my emails as spam. But I can push these things out here. You can do this on the web, Netlify. You can do this within your organization. Say, I want to run a blog, and if they give you some hosting space, you can just run this and then work all from the ease of your R console, your R Studio console. So I like this just quite a bit. You can create, and creating a post is really nice. I'm just going to do just a quick one here. Add-ins. I said serve site, and then they can create a new post. It gives you a GUI how to name it. So like new post. That gives you that. I'm going to do it on a Markdown file. It should generate something new for me here soon. Yep. Gives me a new thing, and now all I have to do is work out of here, make my R Markdown file, and once I save this, actually, Control save. All right. And then once I've done it, actually you see that there's some stuff going on in the console. It's running it live. We'll update it live, so I can actually view this. Once I serve this site back up, I am serving it up. I think I can do this. Yeah, new post shows up right now. So as soon as I just make my R Markdown, pushes it, publishes it, and does it for you all within Markdown. I have 1 minute left to talk about Bookdown. That's okay. Because Bookdown is no different than Markdown and Blogdown. It's just a way that allows you to write books, if you so want to. Now that you've done Iris, now you share your blog post to the world, you want to make a more comprehensive study of that. You can just do Bookdown. And the same principle applies for Bookdown as it did for Blogdown. You install a package called Bookdown. You allow it to generate a new book for you, and what it'll do over here is it starts out with some sample chapters, but basically every R Markdown file now is a chapter. And once you have made your chapters, you come here, edited, put all your content in here, Under the add-ins, you can come down here under the book down section, which gets installed, like say preview book. It'll come up a little faster than last time, but once I have that, it'll go through, execute code, publish your stuff as HTML. Oh, it takes. But you get a book, just like you see, like if you studied any of like Hadley Wickham's books, say out there like Advanced R or anything like that, you get the same format, and that's what you get here. And you can do this all just by, and all your content has to be managed through Markdown. There you go. And here I've made a book. Here's my analysis again. All my analysis on the flowers. Here's my picture of the plot, and here's the irises that I have. So I can make an R Markdown report. I can make blog posts and publish them very easily, and I can make books, which I like for collaboration purposes. And you can all do this by leveraging one thing, which is Markdown syntax. Skip that. Sorry, I always jump ahead of my slides because I get so excited. So all this stuff has been talked about. Don't worry, and it's also on the site. I like this, a static website. And then once blog down you have it, you're in the phone book. People find you. And then we talked about book down, so I really lost the thread of my presentation. Apologies. But I can read this online as a book and publish this just like I do blog posts, but you can make this, and it's all just variations on the theme of how to use an R Markdown file. So you can do cron jobs, you can make blog posts, you can make books, and it's fantastic. So that's it. We've all leveraged Markdown. We've made posts, we've made a book, and now you're going to make a name in the world for doing iris analysis. At the end here, I have resources for all these things. I use the creator's one. I can never see his name. Yue? Thank you. And his documentation is pretty solid. Start there. Our Markdown cheat sheet, if you want to learn what Markdown is, there's a lot of pieces to it, but it's nice to have a cheat sheet. And the I Don't Like Notebooks presentation, which is actually quite funny. You can read it as a presentation. Don't need his input, and which is fine. And that's it. And 2 minutes past. And I was fast and late, but are there any questions that I can field? Yes. So are you a LaTeX guy? It has LaTeX built in because even the Markdown stuff itself has LaTeX as an option to do as opposed to Markdown. So you can, if you have your mentally set up with or LaTeX references, they put LaTeX in and you can actually import it and do that. So all of a sudden you want to read the book, it's, or I should say, pretty much you want to read the book. Question?
Yeah, I know Markdown and I use it a lot, but sometimes you need because we'll hours and hours finally finish your unmatch, and you are so excited you can eat some stuff. You just treat me, and it tells you it's happy, and you don't know why. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you might need another hours and hours to fix it.
Yeah.
At the end, you found that you just reveal your R or your R studio, then the tool you got your need. So how do you do it?
How do I do that? Well, yeah, that's an art. And the way I go about it is I do a lot of development as individual standalone pieces. I have to think really hard about what pieces can stand alone from each other, especially things like loading. Especially, I have a lot of ones where I read in large data sets, and that takes a long time. So I will either create or analyze them. So I will do them offline, either source them back in or develop them. And I'll try to make them standalone in the sense that they don't try not to rely on things that are above them if they are really a time-consuming process, so that you can do them once, get them right, and then you know that part shouldn't fail as part of it. Doesn't always work out, but that's one way to go about it. So really modularize. Even when you can do it this way, you have to think really hard about what your modular pieces are that you want to do. Help? No?
All right, let's stay for a speaker.
Yeah.